I have the worst glute genetics, and I used to be so insecure about how skinny my legs were, but after a year of doing the same glute exercises, even as someone with the glute genetics of a pancake, the progress is kind of ridiculous, not gonna lie, and I honestly can't believe how effective these exercises actually are. So today I'm taking you through my whole glute workout, spilling all my top tips to get the most growth possible, as well as some mistakes I didn't even realize I was making until literally a few months ago, and that really held my progress back for far too long. This video is part of our new gym workout series where I'm sharing my full week of workouts, the exercises and strategies that completely transform my physique. So make sure to subscribe, because otherwise, just what are you doing? First, baddies don't skip their warm-ups, so you're going to do 5 minutes of light cardio followed by some dynamic stretches. If you want a full dynamic stretch routine that you can just follow along, then I'll link that. But it's really important that we're warming up our entire body, especially for leg day, because we're going to be using a lot of our upper body for some of the lifts, and we don't want any injuries today. For our first exercise, to sort of activate the glutes by getting that mind to muscle connection going, we're going to be doing cable kickbacks. These work best if you're using ankle cuffs, but I know a lot of gyms don't actually have them, so I'll link the ones I use in the description. But if you've not got them, then most gyms usually have foot straps, so you can just use those instead. You're going to see people doing cable kickbacks in a lot of different ways, but today we're going to use a form that helps us target a bit more of the upper glute, so that's the gluteus medius and also some of the glute maximus. So you're going to stand facing the machine and cross one leg over the other. You want a slight lean forwards at your hips and hold onto the machine with one hand, because that's going to keep you stable. Your working leg is the one that's going to be moving, so you want your foot pointed out at about 45 degrees and a slight bend in your knee. Your upper body should be pretty much stationary the whole time, and you want to be initiating the movement from your hip rather than bending then extending your knee. I like to add a little pause at the top of the movement so I can really focus on squeezing my glutes and then control it all the way back down. I'd recommend using a pretty light weight until you've got the form down, because if you go too heavy straight off the bat, it can start to impact your lower back. So lighten the weight, get the form down, and then you can increase it. And obviously make sure you don't forget to do the other side, because we don't want to be wandering around with one glute bigger than the other. Next is every gym girl's love-hate relationship, the barbell hip thrust. I actually only realized fairly recently that I'd been doing hip thrusts wrong my entire life, so it's no wonder my glutes didn't grow as much as I thought they should be. But I'm also genuinely surprised that I haven't broken my lower back yet. The thing is, I was told my form was correct before, but then I went and looked at a whole load of other sources and found out that it was barely recognizable as a hip thrust. It was a completely different exercise, I'm not gonna lie. So to do a hip thrust properly, you want to set yourself up against a box or bench that rests just underneath your shoulder blades. I prefer using the plyo box because the height's pretty standard across all gyms, and if you put it against a wall, then it's not going to move. Center yourself in the middle of the bar and make sure you have a barbell pad, otherwise it's going to hurt. Bring your feet in close enough towards you so that when you're at the top of the thrust movement, your knees are going to form roughly a 90-degree angle. A little hack I like to use to find the right foot position is straighten out one leg and then bring in the opposite leg until my foot's in line with my straight leg knee. Then to keep myself stable, I sort of screw my feet into the ground and point my toes out just a little bit. When you're lifting, focus on moving the weight with your glutes rather than your lower back or your hamstrings, and when you reach the top of the movement, finish the lift by squeezing your glutes as hard as you can and pushing your hips forward, but make sure not to overextend your lower back. You want to keep your chin tucked and your spine should be neutral throughout the whole movement. This was the big mistake that I made for so long, is that I would bend my spine at the bottom and sort of scoop the weight up. And that's actually really dangerous because you're shifting a lot of the tension off of your glutes and onto your lower back. So if you're struggling to get the right form down, just lighten the weight, slow down the movement, and focus on your control and keeping that tension on the glutes. Time under tension is really important for muscle growth. So when we get to the bottom of the movement, we're not going to let the plates touch the ground. Instead, we're going to stop just before the plates hit ground level and then reverse the movement and thrust it back up. They do take a little bit of practice, but if I could only do one glute exercise for the rest of my life, it would be barbell hip thrust. Studies have shown they're one of the best exercises for overall glute development. So having some sort of hip thrust variation in your routine is gonna be pretty important if you want to grow your glutes. So we've done a thrust movement, now we're gonna do a hinge movement, and Romanian deadlifts mainly target your hamstrings, glutes, and a little bit of lower back, but today we're gonna tweak the form slightly to emphasize the glutes more. I like to use lifting straps to help with my grip strength just because it means that my grip's not gonna be the limiting factor, so it won't fatigue before my lower body does. There are a few different kinds of straps you can get, but I'll link my favorites in the description, and they can really make all the difference between you getting 3 reps and you getting 5 reps, and that means you can train closer to failure, meaning you'll probably get more out of your workouts. But I also just want to note here that your shoe choice for leg day is going to be really important. You want to choose shoes that have a flat sole, because that means you're going to be able to push more evenly through your feet in movements like RDLs, squats, hip thrusts, so it'll keep you more stable, it's going to be safer on your joints, and you'll likely be able to lift more weight as well. But back to Romanian deadlifts. To avoid confusion, people also call these RDLs, and you can do dumbbell variations as well as barbell variations. So once you're all strapped in, you want to hold the bar with a double overhand grip and your hands slightly wider than shoulder width, so outside of your knees. Stand with your feet shoulder width apart, and you can point your toes straight forwards or slightly outward depending on your preference. You want to keep your chest up, shoulders back as much as you can, and your spine in a neutral position throughout the whole movement. The key thing to master with RDLs is the hinge part of the movement itself. So when you're in the lowering phase, you want to think about pushing your hips backwards, kind of like if you just got out of the car and you dropped your keys, then you were trying to pick up your keys and close the car door with your butt at the same time. Random, I know, but trust me, it works. You want to maintain a slight bend in your knees and keep the barbell close to your body the whole time, so it should be almost scraping up the front of your legs. To make the movement a little more glute biased, we're going to allow for a slightly bigger bend in our knees on the way down, but you're only going to lower the bar to the point where you feel the stretch in your glutes. For me, that's just below knee level, and then I'll push through my feet to raise the bar back up to the starting position. Also make sure you're keeping your core tight the whole time, and as always, control the weight. Next, just in case your glutes weren't screaming at you already, we're gonna do some hip abductions. You can do these banded if you don't have the machine available, but our main goal here is to target some of the areas of the glutes like the gluteus minimus and medius that weren't targeted as much in the other exercises. Using the machine's pretty straightforward, but there's also some tweaks we can do to the form to target different areas of the glutes a little bit more. We're going to do 3 sets here. So for your first 2 sets, you're going to sit upright with your back pressed firmly against the backrest. You want to keep your feet flat on the footrest, brace your core, and try and pull yourself into the seat using the handles at the side of the machine. You're going to be using more power on the outwards part of the movement and then really slow it down on the inwards phase. But for our final set, you're going to lean forwards. This is going to engage more of your glute muscles, so it's going to be easier and you'll probably be able to lift more weight. Now, if this form doesn't feel comfortable to you, then you can just do the same as you have done for the last 2 sets. But I like to throw it in there because it switches things up a bit, it engages more glute muscles, and it can also be good to really help you burn out the glutes at the end. So if you try it, make sure to let me know in the comments how you're feeling the next day, because when I first did this workout, my glutes were killing me for like 2 days after. But to speed up your recovery, obviously make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're eating enough, because if you're not, then your glutes aren't going to have the materials they need to actually repair and grow, and you typically want at least a full day before you train your legs again. However, we're not done yet, because studies show that in order to get the most muscle growth, it's most optimal to train that muscle group 2 to 3 times a week. So that's why I have 3 leg days per week. And in my other leg days, I also train quads, hamstrings, and include a few different exercises for the glutes, so make sure you're subscribed, and you can check out my whole week of workouts here next. See you there!